went to the Queen to tell her her subjects had no bread. Do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people. Good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of The Peasant's Perspective. Pony Boy, you're already on the chats. Good morning. Carlitos, good morning, y'all. Peasant's Perspective. That's you, Ron. Good morning. Glad you guys are here. Guess what time it is? It's the best time of the day. It's the start of the Peasant's Perspective podcast. I'm just kidding. It's the better part. It's the simultaneous sip. I know why you're here. You're here for the simultaneous sip. All you need is a cup or a mug, a glass, a tankard, a chalice, or a stein, a canteen, jug, or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure of the dopamine hit of the day that makes everything better. The simultaneous sip. Are you ready? Now. Where's my little video? I got a little clip to play with this. Where'd it go? Seriously, somebody help me out here. Well, you know the story. Why does coffee smell so good? Because coffee, like many things in life, tastes better than it actually is. Where'd my little... I got a little button here that I'm supposed to be able to push. Oh, well, so be it. So, Ron, do you know what today is? It's a big day.
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
What day is
January 20th.
Okay.
It's a big day for me.
Okay.
One year ago today, I was walking out of federal prison at about 11:30 p.m. in the loving arms of my wife. So much fun. So yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, which is the holiday that it was that I was liberated. So for me, Martin Luther King Day is always going to be Liberation Day. Martin Luther King's promise finally came true for me. Okay, we're all free. Free at last, as he once said. But today marks the 1-year anniversary, and President Trump commented about this on the tarmac yesterday evening. Oh,
geez.
Not AI.
Proof of life.
Right. That's why I couldn't play that clip in the beginning. I didn't have the audio right. All right, here we go. Okay, so here's Donald Trump commenting about his 1 year as president.
Amazing. Tomorrow is the first year. Think of it. 1 year. I don't think there's been a term like it. I don't think any president has had a better first year than we've had in terms of success. Again, we've taken our country from a failure with open borders, no business, everything going badly, terrific inflation, the highest inflation in history, prices that are through the roof. And we've brought prices down. We have very little inflation. We have a great economy. And the prices are coming down still further. But I inherited a mess, and now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world.
We got the hottest country anywhere in the world, Ron. The hottest country. Sarah Singh says, Happy Liberation Day. Sarah Singh's was a huge part of our Liberation Day. She actually came up and visited my wife and I, her and her mother and father, and took us out to dinner the day after I got out and hung out with us for a day in Kansas City. That was super fun. So glad to have you on here. Sapphire Patriot, good morning. Frazier, good morning. Mariezel, good morning, son. Sapphire Patriot says, I love the slurp. Yes, the simultaneous slurp. Liberation Day, indeed. Good morning, son. Remember what day it is. And Mariezel says, it's also Brent's birthday. Who's Brent? He's my brother. He's my little bro, my younger brother's birthday today. So happy birthday, Brent. So glad to have you. Yesterday, my wife was watching a clip from Harmeet Dillon talking about holding people accountable and talking about how, you know, this Department of Justice is just getting started. And my wife commented, and she's not one to be very hyperbolic, but she's like, you know, you haven't really arrested anybody. Right? There's been a lot of talk, and there's been like one new investigation after another. We're sending people. And
we're about to do it.
We're like 15,000 days into the Russia collusion case, and we're still waiting, right? So this is what John Solomon had to say about this. He says he sees a flurry of subpoenas and activity, and maybe, just maybe, Ron, we'll get some accountability.
Is there any sense that people are working around the clock and working weekends to sort this mess out?
There is. And I think the most important day was January 12th, Monday, January 12th, because that is when the grand jury in Fort Pierce, Florida, for the first time convened to look at the grand conspiracy case. I have seen enormous activity by federal prosecutors all across the country since that day. Documents being pulled, people being briefed, questions being asked, evidence being gathered. There is an effort to put together a conspiracy case that the government was weaponized to deprive Donald Trump and his followers of their civil liberties by falsely pursuing them for criminal charges when there was no evidence to do so. That will take you all the way back to Jack Smith and Lois Lerner, 2014 IRS, all the way to Jack Smith, 2024, and the prosecutions that ultimately were dismissed by Judge Eileen Cannon. And ironically, that will all be in Eileen Cannon's district. It looks like that's where the grand jury is based. Now, separate of that, there is the Democrat machinery, the fraud machinery, and the possibility that's an election strategy. You saw Friday night that the confirmation that Waltz and Mayor Fry are being criminally investigated for obstructing the ICE activities. But that investigation is broader than just interference in ICE. It's also looking at whether a willful and blind eye was turned to the fraud, because the fraud was essential to a Democrat election strategy. And so that grand jury in Minnesota is looking at more than...
Do you hear that? The fraud in Minnesota is directly tied to an election strategy. So we've heard this. We've talked about this. A few pundits have mentioned it. But John Solomon is like as close as you can get to the official media spokesperson for the FBI that doesn't get an FBI paycheck.
Right. So that means it's now entering the zeitgeist.
It's entering the zeitgeist. This is now becoming a part of what they're doing. The fraud is to enable election fraud.
That there could be subpoenas delivered today or tomorrow, hand delivered to the governor and the mayor of Minneapolis. That is a big moment. I would not be surprised to see the Minnesota Attorney General also receive a grand jury in the next couple of days, because these whistleblowers, these state workers, are now cooperating with federal investigators. Rand Paul confirmed that on Friday. So you have a federal criminal investigation, congressional investigation, looking at this strategy that the president just tweeted out in the story I did. Then the final piece of the puzzle, and I think this could have indictments or arrests as early as this month, based on my reporting, is they're looking at who is funding these protests, who is obstructing ICE, who are the funders, the orchestrators, the facilitators of these riots and these efforts to impede lawful enforcement. I think that could be the first sign of indictments, that we could see arrests and indictments as early as the end of this month, based on the activity I'm seeing in the field. I think
so indictments not for the stuff that happened 5, 6, 7 years ago that we know about. The stuff that's just happened in the last few weeks. We'll get to it by the end of the month. Okay. I mean, I get it.
The Florida grand jury, we're probably looking at between now and early spring before we see the activities there. But for the first time, the resources are in place, the evidence is gathered, and now real grand jury activity that can result in real charges beginning to happen. Now, they got to deliver, right? It's one thing to have the process, it's another thing to deliver. So I'll have to see if they deliver, but the machine is rolling.
Is there any prosecutor yesterday talking about how a good case takes months, sometimes years to put together so that you can be sure you're going to win? I get it. That makes sense to me. Normal course of business. It's going to take a while to put together a case. But some of these cases are kind of like on their surface, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you remember this old picture right here? So this is Mark McCloskey and his wife.
Yes.
So this is my attorney currently. This is helping me with my case against the government for J6. But 5 years ago now, in 2020, he and his wife stood out on their lawn. This is their house in the background. Okay, stood out on their lawn, on their property, never left their property, and came out to defend their private property from a BLM mob that walked through a broken open gate to get into the gated neighborhood in the first place. And they stood out there with their guns. One of them was inoperable, and basically waved them at the crowd to try to back them off. They got arrested. They got charged with crimes. I think ultimately they even took a plea deal. They just barely got their guns back middle of last year. They were arrested and consequences started happening. The process is the punishment within days.
I think the reason you just brought that up is because the arrest happened pretty quick.
Yeah. Now, yesterday we played the clip of this liberal man standing outside of his house in Minnesota. So, yeah.
I bet he went home that night, right?
Yeah. But he's out here flaunting his age.
Okay.
Crowd control.
Right.
I'm just saying there's a
behind no
double
fence.
Standard. There's a constant double standard.
Right.
And the Democrats, while everybody wants to declare there's a double standard for everyone else, it's super obvious how this is playing out. Mm-hmm. How many right-wing protests have happened? 1. How many cops died? 0. How many non-protesters were, well, I take that back. January 6th, there were officers that were injured. So we'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Sure.
Whatever. But last night in Portland, we had another shooting. 2 cops had to fire on a suspect that was wielding a knife and got fired back on. So those 2 cops are sitting in a hospital after taking a bullet last night in Portland.
Shortly after 8 o'clock this evening, officers got a threats with a knife call. After officers arrived on scene, 2 officers were struck by gunfire. The officers were brought to a local hospital where they're in stable condition recovering. The suspect is outstanding right now, so we have the area closed off. It's going to be closed off for a while while our CERT team's here. We continue to do our investigation. We ask that residents stay in place. Shortly after.
So we got a shooter on the loose that's willing to pop off 2 federal officers just running around Portland. I mean, like, whatever.
Sounds like they were pulling the cops in just so they could shoot them.
That's the suspicion. The suspicion is it was an ambush call. You know, man with a knife, cops respond.
Right.
Pop. So this is, again, when there's no accountability early, it gets worse and worse. As a parent, we've all seen this with little kids, right? If you set boundaries early, you can prevent a lot of crying and anger and little kids calling their parents jerks and stuff like that, right? You can prevent a lot of the bigger problems early when you set strong, strict boundaries. Well, it's no different with adults, right? If you're going to allow people to protest and conglomerate outside of ICE and obstruct and stand in front of their vehicles and shake the fences, well, eventually you're going to get some wacko that's going to show up with a gun and try to push the next boundary. See how it goes. It's not a good plan at all. And all of this angst against ICE and to try to keep illegal immigrants in the country, it all ties back to elections, just like John Solomon said. So this is a flashback clip from Barack Obama telling illegal aliens, people that have no constitutional right to vote, that you can just show up and vote. Nobody will stop you.
If you want to vote and you show up at your polling place, they can't stop you from voting. They can't stop you from voting. If people want to know how to vote, then you can go to iwillvote.com. The fact of the matter is that we give our power away all the time. You know, we tell ourselves, oh, it's hard. It's not going to matter. It's not going to count. And the powers that be, they're counting on us giving our power away.
Many of the millennials, dreamers, undocumented citizens, and I call them citizens because they contribute to this country, are fearful of.
But they're not citizens. Contribution is not the requirement for citizenship.
Voting. So if I vote, will immigration know where I live? Will they come for my family and deport us?
Not true.
Okay.
And the reason is, first of all, when you vote, you are a citizen yourself, and there is not a situation where the voting rolls somehow are transferred over and people start investigating, etc. The sanctity of the vote is strictly confidential in terms of who you voted for. If you have a family member who maybe is undocumented, then you have an even greater reason to vote.
This has been
If you want to vote and you show up at your poll,
it's from the top. So it turns out Barack Obama was deporting, like he was the deporter in chief, but he was only deporting devout Catholic Guatemalans, apparently, to vote for pro-life causes because he had no problem with illegals voting. Just show up and vote. They don't track that stuff. No, ICE won't come find you. If you vote, that makes you a citizen. Just vote. In fact, if you're not a citizen and you have no rights, that's even more reason to go vote.
Yeah, that was the best part.
It's like, okay. So Abigail Spanberger got sworn in as governor of Virginia a couple days ago.
Okay.
And it's bad news bears for Virginia.
Oh, no.
Man. One of the first things she did was she signed into law a bill that says that ICE can no longer work in Virginia and round people up. So there's strike one. The next thing she does is she's got this bill, and I'm not sure if this is passed or passing, but it's a bill for election counting machine readable ballots. It requires ballot scanner machines to be used to count machine readable ballots and prohibits such ballots from being counted by hand for any reason or purpose not specifically authorized.
No, you cannot audit these votes. No.
Just so everybody knows, she's a former CIA agent.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So, okay, illegals, you can stay here. We're going to block ICE. Oh, and by the way, we're counting all the ballots on machines. Don't touch the paper. Like, hello, folks. Republicans have been saying elections have been cheated for a long time, and populist liberals have too, right? This isn't like a new thing. So this liberal woman had a little bit of a red pill when she realized Republicans are right when it comes to
I'm not going to lie. When the Republicans were saying that illegal immigrants are voting and turning the states blue, I did not believe them. And the reason that I didn't believe them was because I was like, well, you have to have a driver's license. And in order to have a driver's license, you have to have a social security number. And if there were any other government documents that you had to have in order to vote, those also require a social security number. And only American citizens can obtain those. But then I discovered that there are 14 states out of 50 that do not require any type of identification at the polls. For those 14 states, there's an exception where they may be required to show ID. And then in quite a few states also, there are government issued IDs to non-citizens where they can vote for certain municipalities. And then there are 12 states that require documentation, but no photo ID required. So it could literally be something like a utility bill. And that's not counting the 14 I listed earlier. So we're already over 50% of the entire country that does not have proper documentation to vote. And then there are 9 states that request your photo ID but offer alternative ways to vote like an affidavit. There are only 10 states in America that strictly require photo government ID to vote. The Republicans were not wrong. And this was the source I used in case anybody was curious. It's nonpartisan.
Outriders. So Republicans haven't been wrong. Donald Trump put out a message yesterday saying American elections have been rigged and have for a long time. It was a pretty short little message, but it's just he's been dripping this out for a while. It's not like he's, been really hesitant to say the 2020 election was rigged.
Well, we were picking up those drips before he was ever dropping them.
Oh, yeah. He was like, go out and vote. And we're like, why? Okay, peasant's perspective. That's you. Good morning, voters. Shantini says, good morning. Pray the Rosary Daily. Good morning. And Douglas Wyatt. Good morning, all. Douglas and I share today as our Liberation Day. I woke up this morning to a message from Doug saying, it's been a year. We got out. I can't believe it. It's just unbelievable. If you haven't watched the interview that we did on New Year's Day with Doug Wyatt, go back and watch the interview. It was a really good interview. So Steve Scalise was on with Fox News talking about the SAVE Act and trying to pass this law that forces people to have some kind of identification to vote
over to the Senate to give them even more incentive to go protect the sanctity of every American's vote. And that is the SAVE Act plus a picture ID requirement. Look, you can't even get on an airplane. You can't go to a bar tonight without showing a picture ID. Yet there are people in many states where the states actually have laws saying you can't show ID, which is a recipe for fraud, for stealing your vote if you're voting legally so that somebody can come behind you illegally in another country and actually vote and steal your vote. Because if somebody's voting illegally, they're stealing your vote if you're following the rules. So SAVE Act plus picture ID, we're going to bring that too, send that to the Senate. I think a lot of Americans would like that protection because if they're following the rules, they just want everybody else to. What makes people angry is when you see boxes of ballots showing up 2 weeks after an election, and then next thing you know, lo and behold, a Democrat takes the lead after being behind for 3 weeks after Election Day. And then somebody who voted by mail in the military, they're overseas fighting to defend our freedoms. Their votes that got in legally before the election are being nullified by somebody illegally. It needs to stop. We're going to have a bill to do just that.
So thinking about all this election fraud and stuff can kind of get you down, which makes you need a pick-me-up. Ron, what's a good pick-me-up if you're down in the dumps about America's elections.
Well, let me tell you, if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, now's your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped. Only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold, dark roast that hits hard, the smooth, medium roast, and the Vitality Mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus. No crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin-free and mold-free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is the one for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does.
Ron, you've got the smoothest radio voice. It's just this perfect, deep, like baritone timbre. I love it so much. It's great. This morning, as I was scooping my coffee with my plastic spoon, I thought, this is crap. I need a golden scoop. This is crazy. How is it possible that I'm doing this with plastic? What a mess. One of the things you find with socialists and communists is they always want conformity. They just cannot stand people to have a different opinion. Everything's got to be the same. Right. So this comedian here, he tells a little joke about growing up in the Soviet Union, how it was. And, you know, it's okay to be an orphan.
Communists had this ritual that every week they would get each kid to stand up and they would ask you, who's your father? And you're supposed to say, my father is Soviet Union. And who's your mother? And you're supposed to say, my mother is Communist Party. Who do you want to be? And you're supposed to say, I want to be a builder, or I want to be a cosmonaut, something like that. They asked me, who's your father? I said, my father is Soviet Union. And who's your mother? I said, my mother is Communist Party. And who do you want to be? I said, I want to be an orphan.
We don't all have to get along. Some of us can be orphans, just kind of in the orbit. Scott Bessent made his way to Davos because they've got their big Davos speech today. So tomorrow, I'm sure we're going to have a whole bunch of real banger highlight clips from Donald Trump's speech there. But Scott Bessent was being asked about, you know, all the trade relations and stuff like that. And he's like, listen, this isn't Soviet Russia. We don't all have to be saying the exact same thing all the time. We can agree to disagree. Look at history. That's common. Even after World War II, not all the world leaders got along.
If anyone in this room wants to go back and study history, has anyone done that? What happened in post-World War II? It was not a straight line. Konrad Adenauer did not always agree with the U.S. president. Charles de Gaulle certainly did not agree with the U.S. positions, but that did not mean that we were not strong allies against the Soviet Union, did it? If anyone in this room...
Guys, listen, we can have Greenland and still be members of NATO. Okay? That's what he's trying to say there. We don't all have to be the exact same thing, okay? Sapphire Patriot says, voting does not make you a citizen. I know, seriously, like it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Must be citizen first, vote second, not the other way around. Carlite says, bring Doug back soon. I agree. Doug is a wealth of information. His hashtag from Sedition Hunters was the info sprayer, because the info warrior that showed up that day and picked up a CO tear gas gun. So he's the info sprayer. I love it. I was bearded mirror. Scott Bessent goes on to talk in this speech he gave, and he's doing Q&A, and he gets asked if there are any economic tools that Europe can use against the United States.
Just to follow into that, so you do not believe that the EU or the UK have any retaliatory financial instruments or measures in their bag that the United States should be worried about?
No further discussion, no follow-up. Are there any tools they can have? No, they're done. No, they're pretty much dead. I mean, they're just sitting there, you know, dead fish.
We gotta save a clip of him saying that. No.
Are there any economic tools they can use against America? No, not at all. He goes on to get asked a little bit more about what countries should do with Greenland and all the bravos that Donald Trump is and all the chaos that he brings. He's just like, sit back, let him do his thing.
Again, I would say this is the same kind of hysteria that we heard on April 2nd. There was a panic. And what I'm urging everyone here to do is sit back, take a deep breath, and let things play out. As I said on April 2nd, the worst thing countries can do is escalate against the United States.
Are there any tools Europe can use against us? No. And by the way, worst thing you could do is escalate
don't
against
try.
us. The follow-up question should have been, are there any tools the United States can use against the EU? Yes. Quite a few. Okay. Now, Lisa Cook, she's on the board of governors over at the Federal Reserve Board, and she's been credibly accused in a criminal allegation that she committed pretty bold-faced mortgage fraud, allegedly. I don't want her to cut off my bank accounts again. So
Sure.
just allegedly. So her case on the validity of her being fired by the president of the United States is being held by the Supreme Court today. So it's the oral arguments. So the case at hand here is simply, is the Federal Reserve is it under the umbrella of the United States government? Does the chief executive have the power to fire executive agency officers? Or is the Federal Reserve really a quasi-federal agency that the people that work there are not accountable to the government? They don't get their money from appropriations and they can print their own money. So what are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with an agency that's under the jurisdiction of the Constitution and the United States government and the apparatus thereof? Or are we dealing with a completely separate foreign entity that just prints our money?
Right. Where do you think we should get our money? From us or from somewhere else?
So if Donald Trump cannot fire a member of the board of governors for a criminal allegation that's run through the DOJ, by the way. I mean, this isn't like, Trump just tweeted it. Like, it came from the Department of Housing or whatever, Polte.
Right. If he doesn't have that kind of power and authority, where does their authority lie?
I know. Good questions. So what all of this does is it leads us to ask the question, is the Fed independent? Right. And if they are independent, or if they are not independent, how much politics do they play? Well, tomorrow is her Supreme Court hearing. It actually might be today. And Scott Bessent was asked about this because Jerome Powell announced, guess what? He's going to go watch oral arguments.
In terms of the Supreme Court hearing, I believe, I'm not sure whether it's today or tomorrow, Jay Powell has announced he's going to attend. And Joe, I got to tell you, I actually think that's a mistake. Because if you're trying not to politicize the Fed, for the Fed chair to be sitting there trying to put his thumb on the scale is a real mistake.
And there's a lot to talk about, obviously.
Now, Scott Bessent and Hassett, they went and sat in the Supreme Court during oral arguments over tariffs. Trump had mentioned he would go and then decided not to, probably because it would be too overtly political and influencing for him to be there, right? But for Jerome Powell to go, it's kind of the same thing. He shouldn't be there. So that'll be interesting. I don't know where the Supreme Court's going to fall on that because they tend to follow the law. So it depends on how Congress created the Federal Reserve. If it is a separate agency, like, can the Congress create something that's then not accountable to that? Is that even a thing? Is that even something that can happen?
Seems pretty illogical.
Is this a 110-year mistake by the Congress of 1913?
That's possible.
Yeah. Turns out the Federal Reserve and its sister organization, the IRS, are unconstitutional. We're just going to get rid of it. Meanwhile, Wesley Snipes going to be like, I want my 3 years back. He served 3 years on 3 misdemeanor charges, by the way. Okay, Brett Baer had
look at the latest Wall Street Journal
new poll that came out that shows that the numbers really haven't moved amongst Trump supporters as well as amongst supporters on the left. Look at these numbers and look how evenly America is split on its extremes.
You look at the latest Wall Street Journal poll. Who's best to handle? Immigration, Republicans in Congress, 44, Democrats, 33. Economy, 38-32. Tariffs, 36-34. I mean, it's one poll, but it shows you that maybe it's not moving as much as people think it is.
No, and situations like this with Don Lemon and the church are not helpful. Look, I don't believe that faith and politics are mutually exclusive. The people who led the civil rights movement were church leaders. But this is not the civil rights movement. And this is harkening back to 2020, where we saw people from outside of a community engage in civil unrest and leave. Don Lemon doesn't live in Minnesota. He is not going to help that community heal and get put back together. And people are watching.
So we're going to loop back around to the Don Lemon story and going in and protesting in a church here in a little bit. But the point is there, when you look there, it's like pretty evenly split. Who handles the economy? 33%, 34%. Who handles immigration better? 34%, 44%. A little bigger gap there between Republicans and Democrats. But all of those things are pretty evenly split. So if you look at the spectrum on the ends, right, you have really solidified support. So now the entire electorate is basically that little middle. That's why the zeitgeist matters so much, because it's the ESPN watcher, the guy that's completely thinking about football and deciding whether or not to bet on the Seahawks, right, is that middle ground where they're like undecided. Yeah, I want the rules enforced, but I don't want them enforced too hard. Yeah, I want the law and order and I want clean streets, but I don't want soldiers walking down the street. Those are two opinions you can have. I mean, there's got to be a way to have clean streets without armed guards on every street intersection. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's the middle ground that we're looking for. And, you know, that's the purpose of the peasant's perspective, is to try to, you know, find that middle ground. And even workers within the government, probably a lot of them fit inside that middle ground. Yeah. You know, they're just going to do their job. If their boss says, fill out a brief this way, they'll do it. If they say, fill out a brief that way, they'll do it. They're not like stuck on the ends. We know there are some. We talk about this a lot. They've burrowed deep into side of the federal agencies, on the staff of different congressmen and senators. So there are some hardline ideological.
Well, they make great clips too. Yeah,
they make great clips. They're hardline ideological people on both spectrums. But Mark Eliason, who's one of these attorneys that is at the center of everything, he was the DNC's attorney when they paid Perkins Coie to drum up the Russiagate nonsense. He's been behind a lot of the lawsuits for election integrity. He's one of these lawfare attorneys that works on the Democrat side. So he was doing an interview, and he's also very pressured because he's front and center in the grand conspiracy case. He's one of these non-government actors that was behind everything, right? Like literally cut the check for the Steele dossier. That's okay. So he's talking about the rank and file people in the government and how they're not doing enough.
Experience has taught us that honestly, the people in most parts of the government, I won't say everyone in government, but most parts of the government, all they're doing is helping the Trump administration function. And that is particularly true in the agencies that he cares about. So let me focus on one, because it's the one where I have had the most back and forth with others about, where people disagree with me. It's also the one I feel most strongly about, and that's the Department of Justice. There is a school of thought that we need good, honest prosecutors and lawyers at the Department of Justice, because otherwise they'll be replaced by bad people. Here's why I don't think that's true anymore. First, whether you are a good, honest person or not, if you are carrying out Pam Bondi's wishes, if you are carrying out political prosecutions, like, you're just as bad as the person who's doing that because they like it. If you're doing immigration detention removals, if you're supporting ICE and, border control, if you're filing briefs about why the military should be patrolling our streets, like, honestly, I don't care whether you've been there a day and were appointed by Pam Bondi, or you've been there for 25 years and view yourself as nonpartisan. You are still doing the bidding of this administration. And
isn't that something I would say about attorneys that worked on January 6 cases? Right? Like, if you even participated, you're gone. And I have said that. But yet he's over here doing the opposite. If you even participate in these ICE cases, you're gone. Do you see how this is an untenable situation for someone that works at the Department of Justice? It's like, listen, man, you guys got laws going both directions. We're just here to enforce them. You put a file on my desk, I'm supposed to do the paralegal.
Yeah, man, right? I just work here.
I just work here. That's not good enough for Mark Elias.
Right.
So not only is he saying to the person who's just a normal line attorney and just part of the process that will do either direction, look, I'll do whatever my boss tells me to do. That middle ground, the nine ideological people, he's now saying, by doing whatever Pam Bondi does, we, this far left 36%, are going to group you in with the far right 36% and persecute all of you when this is done. And it's like, I thought we were supposed to do it first. I thought we were supposed to fire all the middle of the attorneys, right? So he'll continue on.
So the notion that government workers were going to be a guardrail, we're going to institute norms that were going to be unpenetrable or inviolable, that's just not true. It didn't turn out to be true. It actually was almost not true from the get-go, but it is definitely a year in been a failed experiment. So look, we tried it. It didn't work. So I would rather have good people from government resign so that they have incompetent people, then I would have good people in government as functionaries for a bad regime.
Do you hear what he's saying here? So he's like, our original plan was to just call the shots from the outside, and we would hope that some of that middle ground people would pick a side, but they're not. So I'm better off having you guys just quit and put idiots in there, because then we can railroad them in court. That's what he's saying.
That is exactly what he said. Jeez.
We learn so much if you just listen to these people, but you got to listen to the clip. It's painful. It goes on for another 3 or 4 minutes where he talks about that. We're jumping back to Scott Bessent now. And outside of Davos, he had another little meet and greet with the press. And his last question here is a pretty good one.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's going to be a quick one. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions today, but I'll turn it over to the Secretary.
Good to be here today. It's an honor to represent the U.S. delegation on behalf of President Trump. It's been a busy year, and the president will be here on Wednesday and Thursday to sum up the year, talk about his thoughts going forward.
I guess we won't hear from him until Wednesday or Thursday.
We've done trade deals, tax deals, and the deregulation. The U.S. economy is doing quite well. As President Trump says, we have a hot economy. We have trillions of dollars coming in terms of investment, and we expect that to accelerate this year. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Let's start right over there. Yours, to Bill Walsh.
Mr. Secretary, it's a pleasure to have you back in Switzerland. May I ask, what are the key points that you want to achieve here in Davos? And what are your thoughts on Switzerland?
Well, good to be back in Switzerland. And I think that the U.S.-Swiss relationship, after a rocky period over the past few months, is back on a very good track. What do we want to achieve? I think the message is America first does not mean America alone. And I think President Trump will be talking about this is what American leadership in the world looks like. The U.S. will be hosting the G20 next year. And I can tell you in the finance track, we are going to identify the lack of growth as the greatest threat to financial stability. So we are going to be pushing for growth or deregulation.
Right here in the front, James, the Associated Press.
Mr. Secretary, nice to see you again. Thank you for coming. Jamie, Associated Press. Could you tell us what kind of communications you've had with European Union officials since your comments yesterday to U.S. media to avert a crisis and a new showdown and a souring relations between the United States and the European Union over Greenland?
I've been traveling, so I haven't been in touch, but I spoke to President Trump, and evidently there are a lot of inbounds, and I think everyone should take the president at his word.
Does that mean next? I'll take right here, Laurent with AFP.
The European Union. Well, 2 questions. If I could, can you confirm that the president's letter to Norway and then the EU might be preparing retaliatory measures for Greenland? Are you concerned about what that could be?
I don't know anything about the president's letter to Norway, and I think it's complete canard that the president will be doing this because of the Nobel Prize. The president is looking at Greenland as a strategic asset for the United States. We are not going to outsource our hemispheric security to anyone else.
Retaliation by the Europeans? How concerned are you?
Today, guys.
How concerned are you about retaliation? Excuse me, about the Europeans? This question.
I think it would be very unwise. So thank you.
Right, thanks everybody.
How concerned are you about retaliation from the Europeans? I think it would be unwise. So Donald Trump sent a letter to Norway basically being, since you didn't pick me for the Nobel Peace Prize, I no longer have to think about peace, even though I solved 8 wars. And he's like, I'm taking Greenland. It's just another one of those. I'm taking Greenland. Get on board with it. I love it so much. We should take Donald Trump at face value. He says what he says. I mean, he plays 4D chess. Or 5D chess, or checkers. It's hard to know sometimes. It's hard to know sometimes. What do we got, Ron?
Man.
Throw it in. Let's see.
I wish you would wait until these things turn green. Just
before I mention it. Okay. Let those get that all worked out while we watch this next video. So this is Kevin O'Leary on with Will Kane, and he's talking about how this Minnesota thing. So now we're going to get back to Minnesota. How this Minnesota thing has just created this appetite for accountability. I got news for you, Kevin. the appetite's always been there. You just didn't put the appetizer out. Okay. Nick Shirley was the appetizer. Okay. So we finally get a real highlight into what's going on with the fraud, and that it's worse than we could have possibly imagined. You're not just paying welfare queens. You're not just paying people that don't have a work ethic. You're paying ghosts and terrorists and fraudsters on their face, right? It's not just your lazy 1980s welfare queen that Reagan used to rail against. This is just flat out, straight up fraud. And Kevin O'Leary says this is creating an appetite for that accountability.
You know, this whole thing in Minnesota has lit up everybody's interest in accountability and transparency. And now Newsom, we know with certainty, he has presidential aspirations. Well, how's this going to work for him? All this tape you're making, Will, right now, that's coming at him in ads for him when he's running for president. Right now, people say he has no executional skills and he's a bad manager. And is there any evidence that that's not true? He's the guy that has to solve for that and show, look, this $37 billion wasn't wasted. Here's how I spent it. Otherwise, he's going to get cooked like a chicken on a spit on this one.
I think the most compelling ad you could possibly run, telling the story of California, is the number of U-Haul vans leaving the state versus the number of U-Haul vans heading into the state. That's the laboratory of democracy you were talking about.
That's not the most compelling story you can tell. That's like the case all the time. The most compelling story you can tell is just the prices in California, the unaffordability, the homelessness crisis, the violent crisis. That's the story you can tell. That Gavin Newsom, in the 8 or 12 years he's been president, I don't even know, has done nothing.
They're squeezing people out of their homes.
None of his campaign promises have come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
None of them. In fact, many of them have compounded, and he's run on them again. So this is the 5. Donald Trump tweeted this out, which is why we want to play it. This is what Donald Trump wants us to hear. And it's the 5 with Greg Gutfeld.
Sisters who stormed that church have a legal problem?
Okay, so let's back up. We got to talk about this church because we didn't cover it the other day because I wasn't 100% sure how big a story it was going to be. But Don Lemon, along with a whole bunch of these other Minnesota agitators and protesters, walked into a church that was actively having worship and protested inside the church, disrupted the whole thing. It was kind of an ugly scene. They thought that they were going to come in and, whatever, do their thing inside this church. All these ICE supporters in church. And apparently the pastor at this church is an ICE agent. So that was also one of the reasons why they targeted him. So they walked into this church and did this big whole thing here. So that's the context. We're not going to play any of the footage because a lot of it's, not great footage, but that's the gist of it. They walked into a church, disrupted the whole thing, and made a big old scene protesting.
Possibly.
Yeah, they have a big one. And if I were a federal prosecutor, I would charge them with interference of free exercise of religion, violations of the Civil Rights Act, violations of the FACE Act, which under Biden, peaceful protesters against abortion sitting down, 80-plus-year-olds were prosecuted under, obstruction of federal functions, disorderly conduct, federal trespass, hate crimes, conspiracy to the Civil Rights Act, assault, and if Don Lemon kept up his charade to a federal agent that he didn't know what was going on, then I would charge him too with lying to a federal agent. And then on the state level, I would
Don Lemon's on camera saying he talked to the organizer and this was all pre-planned. And
so hold on. So I don't know anything about this story. Is this the same Don Lemon that was on CNN?
Yes.
What the hell is he thinking going into a church? I mean, this is really the first time I've heard of this. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Here in just a minute.
Say
he
what?
was on camera saying this was organized. I talked to the organizers. I'm going there with them. So this was a clearly orchestrated event to go in there. And
how did he think that this was a good idea?
They don't think, Ron, just like I wasn't thinking.
He really is the stupidest person I've ever.
We've all been stupid a moment or two.
I know,
in our
but
lives.
This is so dumb.
Of course it is. Let's continue to listen to her here.
Charge unlawful assembly, disorderly conduct, trespassing, harassment, intimidation, and child endangerment. And here's the thing. If I were an employer there in that city, I would fire anyone, any of them that engaged in that shameful, unlawful, horrific, anti-Christian behavior. And if I were a parent there in that city, I would not let any of my children touch the children of those parents that you are seeing right there if they have children. And I would make it clear it's because they are siding with and standing with child rapists.
And the 35% on the two ends of the spectrum just gets more and more calloused and hard. The left doesn't want their kids to associate with the dirty conservatives, and the conservatives are like, don't touch the hippies kids.
Recidivist sodomizers and convicted murderers over and over again to the tune of 1,600 in that city alone that have been, you're welcome, removed. And if I were a tech founder, by the way, I would deplatform all of those individuals that you saw in the midst of their engaging in the felonious behavior I just outlined, filming everything so that they would not have a platform and they would not get their dopamine hits anymore. And the dopamine dries up. But here's the thing. As a Christian, my real inspiration comes from that one woman that you can see on the video that stood there the entire time praying over those vicious, unlawful, anti-Christian, horrific trespassers there. And I pray that their impact remains at zero and that hers covers the world.
Hopefully. So that's what Donald Trump posted. He wants us to have those thoughts that there's a slew of charges that could be issued against these people. And they use the very charges that you would use to go against these people who broke into this church, the same exact laws and charges that they used to prosecute anti-abortion protesters, they would use on these, the exact same rules. Now, Doug Wyatt, who's listening to the show and is in the chat, he was in prison in Danbury, Connecticut with some of the pro-life protesters that were prosecuted under Joe Biden under the FACE Act. These are the best people on the planet, according to Doug and Steve Bannon. I mean, you think I'm a good guy. You should think those guys, right? Okay, so really incredible people. Same exact laws apply. Because remember, you can't make a law that just says, don't do this. You have to do, if somebody violates a place of worship or XYZ, does that make sense? So it's broad. Obviously, it was designed to target people protesting abortion clinics, but it's written in such a way that it's anybody who targets any types of these facilities. So Nicole Welch, this female pundit that's very virulently anti-Trump and everything. We play clips from her every now and then. She was on with Don Lemon, and he's explaining kind of his perspective on this. Listen to this nonsense.
Can't wait.
And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are,
before we finish this clip, HL Young 22 says they forgot conspiracy. What does that charge carry? 10 to 20 years, depending on the conspiracy.
And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much. And so, yeah, I absolutely 100%, but it's an intimidation tactic. And, I said, I don't understand how I've become the face of it when I was a journalist. I do understand that I'm the biggest name there. And I'm also, as I was on with my producers this morning, you and Kylie talk all the time. My producers were saying, I said, how did I become the face of this? And my producer said, Don, you're a gay black man in America.
Oh, it's because you're a gay
He's
black
gay.
man. So not only, yeah, he is gay.
Okay.
So not only is he going to have the Trantifa mafia helping him out, but he's also going to be able to call upon the Black Panthers. Blah, 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 blah. The Black Panthers, who, guess what, Ron? They're in training.
About face.
What?
Uso. What are we here for?
Just said they're the protect Black America. So Don Lemon's got his militia.
About face. Uso. What are you here for?
I'll take Green Berets in Venezuela all day. I remember one time during 2020, we were doing the podcast. I had a job. Maybe it was 2021. I think it was 2020. We had a job over in Seattle. We were stripping the rubber track off of a high school track field.
Okay.
And, so that they could come in and lay a new track. So I'm out there with the skid steer, stripping up this track. And I can't remember the name. I took pictures of it, but on the flagpole at this school, at the top of the flagpole, there was no American flag out at all.
Okay.
It was a gay pride flag followed by a trans flag. So you had the rainbow flag and then the trans flag that's pink and blue. And then it had a Black Lives Matter flag.
Okay.
Those were the three
the
flags.
Trifecta.
Yeah, those were the three flags flying over the school. Now, school was out. It was summertime.
Okay.
But somebody went out and raised those flags over this
Okay.
I think it was a middle school, elementary school. I don't remember. But the funny thing was every morning when I'd show up, just like you saw in that video, there was a group of black people dressed in all black like that doing training. Like, you know, sometimes they had like helmets on, like they were doing riot training in the field of this school that I was stripping the track for. They had a BLM flag along with the gay pride flags flying over. Pretty interesting. So if you don't think that there's a war on Christianity, and if you don't think that people on the far left like that have a, you know, it's not the Christianity I practice. What are we talking about, right? This war on Christianity is everywhere. Again, we're not battling to try to convince the 35% on the far left. We already got the 35% on the far right, right? We're trying to get the people in the middle. The people in the middle need things like exposure to Bible lessons. They need things like moments in prayer in school to be reflective. They need these little moments that happen in society where we put aside our cares of the world and we gather around the Christmas tree lighting around Christmas, where we gather around and we have an Easter celebration as a community. We set aside all of our dogmatic differences, and the Protestant and the Catholic can hold hands together and worship Jesus. Does that make sense? But this is being taken away from us. Not only historically have the divisions between Christian sects been exploited to create animosity between the different religions, but now you've got animosity between just normal people and religions.
School district has come under fire in a new lawsuit that claims school officials force students to hide their Bibles in their backpacks. The suit also mentions a school board director who openly admitted to having animus and biases toward a Christian school program called LifeWise. Here is that school board director in his own words.
I want to make it very extremely abundantly clear that yes, I do in fact hold animus towards LifeWise Academy. It is an organization of homophobic bullies who are active and willing participants in the efforts to bring about an authoritarian theocracy.
So he just said the quiet part out loud. And the attorney for the group LifeWise argues that these restrictions violate decades of legal precedent. Outnumbered interviewed one concerned parent of the school district who fears that the school has interfered with her right to decide how she wants to raise her kids.
It just became really concerning for me as a parent then, when my students needed to seal up their Bibles and hide them at school. And that I just felt like interfered with my right to raise my children according to our faith, and to not hide our faith in all public settings.
The school district said this in a statement, quote, "The district will continue to evaluate any requests to participate in district-sponsored events simply because you're..."
Yeah. So, you know, let's flip it all around. Hey, you can't wear your hijab in school because it expresses your religion too much. Hey, you can't bring a Quran to school. You can't have it outside of your backpack. It's just, it offends the Christian students. Right? But yet we do this all the time against Christians. We call them racists. We call them, you know, bigots. We call them, you know, as Barack Obama used to say, they cling to their Bibles and their guns and their mommies, right? The whole thing is just a complete mess. Now, meanwhile, sane people, real men, people who are out there fixing things, like out in Minnesota, have made significant progress. Since Trump's been in office, they've already taken 3,000 criminals off of Minnesota. And listen to the types of criminals they've taken out.
DHS announced tonight that they have arrested a total of some 3,000 illegal immigrants in Minnesota, including over the weekend, several convicted of crimes such as homicide and sexual assault. Meantime, several dozen protesters remain here at the federal building, protesting the actions of federal agents, but they are staying behind the newly erected barriers put here by the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. It is a simple and effective so far measure that raises the obvious question: why didn't local law enforcement do this last week? Brett?
Because they want to throw the election. Oh, wait, did I connect too many dots? Oh, sorry. Did I get to the end of the story too soon? Oh, no, there's some steps in between why they waited to move the barricades in the elections, but they're connected. Trust me. So they've made huge progress in Minnesota, and they've taken real criminals off the street. They are not out there trolling for just anybody. But there is, you know, like they've said, ISIS said, if we go into a house to take out a murderer and he's got 9 other illegals living with him, we're taking them all, right? So this is Greg Gutfeld.
Oh, no, it's not. Oh, shoot. Dang it.
No, we were so close. Try it again.
Dang it. Sometimes, man.
Sometimes the timing just doesn't work out perfect. We've had great chats in here today, you guys. Please, if you haven't chatted this month, don't forget to chat. We've got to meet our minimum number of monthly chats. But in the meantime,
it works when it works. So you get it when you get it. They can cancel your accounts, freeze your cards, decide what you're allowed to buy, say and support. Big banks and financial institutions have total control and they use it. That's why financial independence matters more now than ever. Introducing Rumble Wallet, a non-custodial wallet built for real freedom. With Rumble Wallet, you control your money, not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. Buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin in one place. No permission, no middleman, no cancel button. And when you want to support the creators you actually believe in, you can use the Rumble Wallet app to directly tip content creators fast and without interference. This isn't a credit line that you can shut off. It's your wallet permanently. Yours to protect your future. Yours to protect your family. When the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. Rumble Wallet isn't about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download Rumble Wallet now and step away from the big banks for good. True ownership, true protection, true financial freedom.
Awesome. Debbie says, hello, freedom. And also, Sherry. That's awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, so now let's listen to Greg Gutfeld just eviscerate Jessica Tarlov over kind of all of this stuff, but the Minnesota rioting, the going into the church. Greg Gutfeld does it better than anybody to just take their shame, right? Take the things that they're doing and kind of just put it right back on their lap.
Really going on.
Renee Good.
Yes, because that is actually not the story here. The story is, the story is how you got here, and you won't admit that is the reason why this isn't about immigration. It isn't about ICE. It isn't about Trump. It is about suicidal empathy that is driven by a rescue fantasy. You have all of these young middle-aged women going out there because they have some kind of emptiness in their lives that are going out there in this kind of rescue delusion, helping people they don't know, strangers who are guilty of crimes. How can you defend that? This is not protesters going to a church. That is a mob. The people that invented the phrase safe spaces are breaking it up, frightening kids, right? These are the people that call us fascists and they're hunting people. These are the people that claim to defend women and yet are defending men who abuse women. These are the people that call us homophobic and yet they want to out ICE guys for using, I don't know, gay sex apps. Let's be honest here. Fry's a pussy. He's scared of these people, or else he would stand up for it. Calling it love, there's no such thing as a mob with love. And imagine showing this tape to Don Lemon 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and saying, is this where you saw yourself, Lemon? Crashing a church service, scaring kids, attacking a pastor? Was this your hope and dream to do this? Radicalization is gradual. Black Lives Matter is now bad guys matter. And now you'll defend anything. You're defending rapists. These are the people you're defending. On what? And I'm going to go back. No. You had your chance. You brought this up. Where are the police? You know, when you have Hamas supporters and Jewish students, police make the separation. Antifa, Proud Boys, police make the separation. Pro-life and feminists, police make the separation. Somehow that separation is not even here, even when the leaders are framing this as protesters versus persecutors, because that's part of the this fantasy world that you live in, and yet they decide that they don't need cops to separate it. The ICE agents aren't supposed to deal with that. Mm-hmm. That's what the police do. So you got to ask yourself, why aren't the police there? Because it's a deliberate thing to create this spectacle. And then I'll finish. Mm-hmm. This is not an isolated thing. These rescue fantasies exist because the real power of women, which is in the roles of community, whether it's wife, mother, work, teaching, that stuff has been marginalized by our modern leftist culture that has to be replaced by activism. Your life is meaningless unless you're out there screaming in a cop's face. You have all these sad people out there in this liberation role playing, and you're egging it on. You should not be egging this on, Jessica. We had this. This is a time for brave women. We saw the rise of the internet dad, whether it was Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, Mike Rowe, Scott Adams. These are Joe Rogan. These are people that decided to help young men find meaning in life, whether it is through service or hard work, constructive activities. Where is the internet mom? The women who step up and show younger women out of this spiritual dead end, because it is a spiritual dead end, and how apt it is that they end up in a church screaming at people. This activism doesn't produce anything but suffering, because it replaces what is truly meaningful in people's lives. And that's what I meant about the backdrop. It is not about good. It is not about the police officer. It's about how we got here and why we've talked about this over and over again, whether it was George Floyd, whether it was ICE. It's all, whether it was the border guard with the whip. It's all the same. It's a desire to be part of this rescue fantasy because your life's so freaking empty.
Man, that was really good.
Yeah. It's just like people replace things that should be in their normal life, children, grandkids, and they replace it with a muse. Illegal aliens. Why? Because they're like my grandkids that I don't have. Because I chose to be a hippie. Yeah. You know what I mean? And abort my first 5 kids.
Yeah.
So it's so sad, but he's dead on there, right? That's why the fight for that middle ground is so important. That's why it's so important that people that listen to shows like this and other shows, don't be afraid to share shows. One of the things you find over and over and over again by these people who document their political progression, like the clip we played earlier about the girl who said, I thought Republicans were lying about elections.
Yeah.
All it takes is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the really great thing about conservatism.
But they need to see it from a person. Somebody has to tell them. They're not going to just find it on accident on some meme somewhere. Somebody has to help them.
And it's interesting because it always goes one of two ways. It's either somebody has a ton of credibility with you that can break your barrier.
A friend.
You trust them, a friend. Or it's some complete stranger. There's that old phrase from Jesus, a prophet's never heard in his own town. You know, you might be that crazy uncle that's ranting about election fraud and narco terrorists that run the country. Well, your family at Thanksgiving might not be listening to you, but your cousins that never hear from you, that drip, drip, drip does happen. Don't be crazy, folks. Don't be the guy that I'm going to show you right here, because on their side, they can get a little bit crazy. And I've met some of these crazies myself going through my J6 journey. So this was from, I think it was Friday. This individual here that you'll see, big beard and everything, he was arrested at Friday's protest, was immediately released, and then went and stormed this church with Don Lemon.
Oh my God.
So this is just another one of those, you create this revolving door. Oh, why aren't they arresting the protesters? And then it's like, oh, we did. Look, we arrested him. Yeah, but you let him out 5 hours later and he went right back out and did it, which is why there's no consequences. Todd Blanche, who I question if he's a good witch or a bad witch, is on with Will Cain, and he's like, we're going to finally charge these people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you saw there was anti-Christian, anti-law enforcement rioters storming a church in this country, and that's a violation of law, and we are absolutely investigating. Our Civil Rights Unit has already sent experts out to Minneapolis today. The Civil Rights Unit, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, DHS is investigating this, because what you saw the fear in the eyes of the members of that church. That fear should be extended to every single American that's happening in a city in this country, and we are investigating it aggressively.
So I got a question since I'm catching up.
I didn't hear arrest. I heard investigating.
Since I'm catching up on this topic with Don Lemon and the whole church thing, is there any, has anybody talked about why they picked this specific church? Did they consider storming a mosque? And how would that have come off? I mean,
no, of course they didn't consider it. It was never part of their consideration. It was always going to be targeting the Christians. So here's Harvey.
So that's my point. So they're targeting Christians.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So here's Harmeet Dillon, and she's a Sikh. She's not Christian, by the way. But here's Harmeet Dillon talking about this whole case. And this is the one that's triggered my wife to be like, is there ever going to be accountability? Like, I like the words you're saying, but you still have 0 arrests. Okay.
I've had a chance to chat with Attorney General Pam Bondi. You guys posted late last night that the Department of Justice.
I don't know this woman's name, but on the far right here, she was on the weekends. No, excuse me. She was part of the contributors on Newsmax in the morning in prison. So every morning when I'd watch Newsmax, she was one of the anchors.
Dope.
I just had that warm and fuzzy feeling where I'm like, oh, it's a friend. I spent so many hours with her in prison. I don't know her name even, but I'm like, oh, I remember her.
In the Civil Rights Division, which you lead, will be looking into this incident to see if federal law was violated. What can you tell us?
Well, yeah. So the Attorney General has been on this from the moment it happened. I was actually in the air when she first reached out to me, and we immediately jumped on this. There are already 2 prosecutors from my office on their way to Minneapolis, and they'll be there this morning. We have an FBI team assembled and local prosecutors as well. This is going to get the highest attention from the Department of Justice because there is no more sacred right in our Constitution than the right to assemble and pray to God. And there are federal laws that protect that right. And what
about voting? Can we also do the voting? Can you send a crack crew to go track down the voting fraud and get on top of that?
And here it was a shameful exercise of virtue signaling, disruption, fear, terror. You can see children in this video being ushered out the back by their terrorized mothers. And this is illegal. And I want to add, before people start spazzing about the First Amendment, that the Biden administration prosecuted people peacefully praying outside abortion clinics for much, much less. Prosecuted them under conspiracy statutes, under the Klan Act, which I also have jurisdiction over at the DOJ. And so the people who did this made a big, big mistake, whoever they are. We are investigating exactly who they are, who coordinated with them, who paid for it, and who was there. And this will be met with the full force of the United States Department of Justice, as the Attorney General has directed. And we discussed yesterday with the pastor who was totally shaken. He was with his family. We want to make sure everyone felt safe. And there will be further legal action in coming days.
Yeah. Okay. I hate to be giddy about other people getting arrested, but I mean, come on.
Well,
Debbie in the chat, Debbie6265 says, when I watched Lemon when I watched Lemon outside talking to those people, there was a police car blocking the front parking area. How did they just walk in? Why did the officer never come in? Did he leave? Well, here is one of those officers in Minnesota after Nick Sorter got his camera taken from him, $1,000 camera, and was assaulted in front of everybody. He went to the officer to get some help, and this was the response he got. So, Debbie, I would imagine the response of the officers outside of this church were there performatively. They weren't actually there to do anything.
Looking for the car, but you guys got to do us a favor and stay out of this area. Right? We don't want anything else escalating to this point again. We got a lot of reports. And
well, we still, I mean, I guess what I don't understand is
felony versus them just not liking our.
I understand. We get attacked and assaulted. By the way, they tried to steal my camera earlier, and we're the ones told to leave. Like,
I'm not justifying what they did, but we're trying to keep the peace at the end of the day. And the bottom line is, you guys obviously aren't from the area.
But it's like if I'm a woman and I get raped for wearing tight jeans, and it's like, well, you shouldn't have been there. It's like
that's what we're saying.
Well, we're being told to leave when we're the ones who got attacked. I mean,
that's basically what the officer outside that was supposed to guard the thing was like. Well, I mean, I guess the Christians can leave. I mean, I can.
They should go home.
Christians are more pliable. They'll probably leave before I can get this protester group to leave.
Right.
That's why. It's because the police don't care. And if they do care, their hands are tied by the mayor. They can't do anything. Okay. So this is Don Lemon on with Keith Ellison, the Attorney General in Minnesota. You just heard Harmeet Dillon talk about the FACE Act. Remember, these abortion centers, that's their high church. That's their temple to the highest Baal or whatever, where they do their child sacrifice. So if you come into a Christian church, that's our temple. Okay. Keith Ellison here just doesn't understand. He's like, well, the FACE Act wasn't for that.
And the FACE Act, by the way, is designed to protect the rights of people seeking their reproductive rights to be protected, and so that people, for a religious reason, cannot just use religion to break into women's reproductive health centers, right? So how they are stretching either of these laws to apply to people who protested in a church over the behavior or the perceived behavior of a religious leader is beyond me.
Because if you're going after a belief system, it's because of a belief system. Otherwise, you just charge an on the surface crime. The whole FACE Act thing is you believe abortion's bad. Your beliefs can't cause you to infringe on someone else's beliefs, period. It's not about abortion. It's not to protect abortion. It's to protect the abortionist's beliefs about abortion.
Are any of these protesters that came to this church, do we know anything about their religious status? Are they Christian? Are they Islam? What are they?
Well, Don Lemon says he's Christian. Remember, he's like, it's my Christian.
Okay. So how come he doesn't understand this? I don't get it.
Who knows? They understand it. That's the thing. It's like us. I can understand it. I can look in a mirror. I can see when, yeah, I did that. And, okay, you know, I mean, protesting is like.
All right. Well, I can't wait for him to talk to Harmeet Dillon.
Yeah, we'll see. We will see. All right. Let's initiate a raid, Ron.
Okay.
We're going to be heading on over to Vlog do Lisboa. He's got one listener over there. So let's go crash.
Let's crash him.
Let's crash it. Yes. Let's crash it. Incoming raid from the peasant's perspective. Baby.
You never know.
This Rumble's so great. It's got so many great tools, and it's like a pretty easy streaming app. But man, does it have some hiccups, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of refreshing and stuff like that.
I don't know if
start
it happened.
raid. Okay, I guess maybe we won't be raiding Vlog do Lisboa. He's got his own hat. Look at this. He's got his own hat. We need a hat. He's got his own t-shirt. Doug, look, he's got his own t-shirt. What are we waiting for? We need to do that.
Dude.
Yeah, we need to do that. Okay, and that really it really concludes the show today. I've got one little clip about J6, and it's from Stuart Rhodes comparing himself to Ray Epps. And you know, I'm just going to pass on this clip today. I think we talk about J6 a lot. At the bottom line is everybody in America is waiting for some accountability. For 4 years, people on the left were waiting for accountability against Donald Trump and all his sycophants. And now here we are waiting for accountability against the left and all their sycophants. I don't know if we're going to really see any accountability. And really in America, you shouldn't see political accountability or political retribution in this regard. It should always be centered around specific criminal acts. Unfortunately, from my perspective, when I step back and look, I'm like, I have a lot of articulable criminal acts on the left, but I have a lot of political prosecution against the right. I don't want to become the thing we hate. We don't want to just politically prosecute everybody on the other side, but you can't keep turning the other eye, because when someone commits open-faced crime, whether it's lying to a federal officer, whether it's FACE Act violations, whether it's election integrity violations with photocopying ballots or whatever it is, when you don't prosecute those crimes because you're afraid of the political appearance of it, we've really lost the plot as a nation. And that's where you get in, where people start justifying, well, it's against Christians, so I can commit this hate crime. It's like, get that out of the zeitgeist, man. Persecution against any group, it's just as wrong to tell kids to put away their Bible as it is to tell them to put away the Quran, right? That's the whole idea there. In a marketplace of ideas, the best idea will rise to the top. As long as we can keep our hands off each other, violence changes those calculations. And that's where we're right now as a nation, we're bumping up against that. You got guys showing up on street corners with AR-15s, just like in 2020 when people came out of their homes with guns. Kyle Rittenhouse to defend himself. We go nowhere bad, nowhere good here. All of the solutions that are short-term sit in the hands of the Department of Justice. They've got to do their job. It's not going to work anymore for us to sit back and wait and wait and wait. How long is it going to take for them to get accountability for this protest in this church over the weekend? I know for me, they had me indicted within 24 hours. And you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take that long when there's an articulable criminal offense that can be charged. Get it done. All right, that's it for us today. We will talk to you guys again tomorrow.
Ma'am, sorry. What knight lives in that castle over there? I'm 37. What? I'm 37. I'm not old. Well, I can't just call you man. You could say Dennis. I didn't know you were called Dennis. Well, you didn't bother to find out, did you? I did say sorry about the old woman, but from behind you looked... What I object to is you automatically treat me like an inferior. Well, I am king. Oh, king, eh? Very nice. And how'd you get that, eh? By exploiting the workers. By hanging on to outdated imperialist dogma which perpetuates the economic and social differences in our society. If there's ever going to be any progress...
Dennis, there's some lovely filth down here. Oh, how'd you do?
How do you do, good lady? I am Arthur, King of the Britons. Whose castle is that?
King of the who?
The Britons.
Who are the Britons?
Well, we all are. We are all Britons. And I am your king.
I didn't know we had a king. I thought we were an autonomous collective.
You're fooling yourself. We're living in a dictatorship. A self-perpetuating autocracy in which the working classes...
Oh, there you go, bringing class into it again.
Well, that's what it's all about. If only people would...
Please,
good people. I am in haste. Who lives in that castle?
No one lives there.
Then who is your lord?
We don't have a lord.
What? I told you. We're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week.
Yes.
But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting.
Yes, I see.
By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs.
Be quiet.
But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more
Be quiet.
I order you to be quiet.
Order, who does he think he is?
I am your king.
Well, I didn't vote for you.
You don't vote for kings.
Well, how'd you become king, then?
The Lady of the Lake, her arm clad in the purest shimmering samite, held aloft Excalibur from the bosom of the water, signifying by divine providence that I, Arthur, was to carry Excalibur. That is why I'm your king. Listen, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate from the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony. Be quiet! Oh, but you can't expect to wield supreme executive power just because some watery tart threw a sword at you. Shut up! I mean, if I went round saying I was an emperor, just because some moistened bint had lobbed a scimitar at me, they put me away. Shut up! Will you shut up? Ah, now we see the violence inherent in the system. Shut up! Oh, come and see the violence inherent in the system! Help! Help! I'm being repressed! Bloody peasant! Oh, what a giveaway. Did you hear that? Did you hear that, eh? That's what I'm on about. Did you see him repressing me? You saw it, didn't you?